So my name is Tam, as Van said, and I'm the head of market for KPMG in Vietnam and Cambodia. So by the way, within KPMG system, Vietnam and Cambodia is considered one cluster. So my role is actually more on channel partnerships, strategy, regulatory affairs, and marketing communications. But also last year, I had the opportunities to participate and to jointly work on thought leaderships on electric vehicles and also part of the KPMG Global Automotive Outlook. So I do hope that with that limited knowledge, I would be able to ask our fellow panelists good questions. My job is very easy, by the way, asking questions. The more difficult part is theirs. All right, so that's about me. And perhaps now we invite maybe Shilpa, the only female panelist, to give a brief introductions about yourself, please.
Sure.
All right.
I do hope that I'm on this panel because of what we do, not because I'm a female, but but I think I really appreciate the fact that diversity is something that is appreciated in the panel. So I just to give you a brief introduction, I represent the Private Infrastructure Development Group. So for those of you who don't know PIDG that well, we are a blended finance organization. We are donor funded. There are 7 governments that fund us, and we provide catalytic capital to get infrastructure finance moving and multiplying. That's our motto. Thank you.
Thank you, Shilpa. Maybe now we move on to Ian.
So I'm Ian. I am actually a professional banker, but ended up in EV charging because I invested in Charge Plus. So Charge Plus, we started in 2018. Today we are in 6 countries in Southeast Asia, starting from Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam. Our vision is really to have basically a charging highway all the way from Singapore to Vietnam, to the end of Vietnam, 5,000 kilometers. Today, since 2018, we have about 5,000 chargers across all the countries and about 1,000, maybe about 1,500 locations, and we're constantly expanding. And that's basically Charge Plus in a nutshell.
Thank you, Ian. And finally, Paul.
Hi, I'm Paul, and I'm the co-founder and also Chief Growth Officer of MedEV. We've only been around for 2 years, and actually, I spent the last 30 years selling cars for many brands, consulting, and so I was part of the problem with the traffic and the pollution. So the last 2 years, I tried to make up by making electric vehicle and also helping transition to electric. Yeah, so that's a short introduction.
You atone for your sins, basically.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Paul. I think that's a very good introduction. So I think if you're looking into the compositions of this panel, so we have Paul, who are actually the manufacturers of the EV, the e-bike in Vietnam. So he represents sort of the manufacturing side. But also Paul, history, he used to work for Mercedes. So I guess, learning from what the multinational sort of way of behavior and looking into the market segmentations and opportunities, actually very, very good way for Paul to give us some of the insights. And then we have 2 of our friends from Singapore, right? Shilpa, I'm sure your company investing across jurisdictions and geographies. And Ian, I think before this panel, we talk about, how advanced is Singapore compared to some of the neighboring countries. So I'm sure there are some of the lessons we can learn from Singapore and we can apply for Vietnam. So just to sort of setting the scenes. So I just want to give you a couple of sort of facts so that we kind of understand why the question we have prepared to help everyone uncover the opportunities and challenges today. So I think, first of all, for most of the people who are from outside Vietnam, you came into the countries. I met a group of investors earlier last week. And one of the observations they gave to us is that there are a lot of electric vehicles on the road, and very, very different from the country where they come from. So that's the thing that, the very first observations. So I think Vietnam is actually have an explosive electric vehicle growth. I think before 2020, 2019, there was actually very, very few electric vehicles on the road, including the Tesla that was imported by some of the unauthorized dealers. Well, even nowadays, there's no authorized dealer of Tesla in Vietnam, by the way. And now, I think in the end of 2024, we are seeing the numbers that are actually growing about 560 times. And annually, I think electric vehicles in Vietnam is actually growing double digit. Okay? Second of all, I think the Vietnamese government has very ambitious targets. And they're looking at, I think by 2030, over 50% of the vehicles are electric-powered vehicle. And they're looking at 100% of buses and taxis, which are public transportation, are all electric vehicles. So I think that will generate a lot of opportunities, charging stations, investment in infrastructure that we talk about. And lastly, I think we're looking to the local manufacturing. We know one of the champions is VinFast, which probably account for 90% of all electric vehicle manufacturing in Vietnam. Having said that, I think the opportunity is huge, given Vietnam is 104 million populations, and now we have over 70 million vehicles on the road. So when you look into the number of electric vehicles and the transition into electric vehicle, I think there's huge potential. All right, so that's probably setting the scenes. And I just want to go into the very, very first question to our panelists today. So hearing from what I just shared, right? So can you, from your point of view, what are the key drivers for making Vietnam such an attractive market for electric vehicles? Any one of you would like to volunteer for the first questions?
Yeah, perhaps I'll go first because I go into it. Actually, I started to go into EV after doing market research for EV company entering to Vietnam. And so we found that there's a lot of opportunities, with the population, more than 100 million, and at the same time, more than 70 million vehicles already being sold. So the market is there. And the other thing is, like you said, the growth from 2019, from 2% electric to 10% in 2024. Incredible growth, but there's still so much potential. Out of the 75 million vehicles on the road, only 10% are electric. So you see there's over 60 million vehicles that need to be converted. People already used to two-wheelers, right? So the population is there, a very fast-growing middle-income population, and also, hungry to learn and also develop. So I think the market is there. And also this is young population as well. So they're very eager for change and, and also forward thinking. So those are the things that we saw. Yeah.
Ian?
So we look at it, I think for Vietnam, the way I look at the whole structure of the country is, number one, on a worldwide stage, you already see much of the countries going into EV. But I think Vietnam is especially well placed because Vietnam has, number one, all the natural resources to move into electricity. But yes, there are a lot of breaks here and there, whether it's the generation of power, whether it's basically the network that transfers the electricity, as well as in terms of the production. But I think Vietnam can be very, very self-sufficient if it moves into the electric vehicle market, and that's one of the interesting aspects that we see for the Vietnam market.
Sure.
I think these are very pertinent points, especially the points on the fact that Vietnam has a young population, demographics which essentially, a growing middle-income population, which is supportive of investment in EV. I think just two additional points that I want to mention. So PIDG has a mandate to support investments which are centered around climate change. So decarbonizing the transportation sector is a very important element of climate change mitigation. And that is one of the reasons why we are supporting EV investments in all our mandate countries. Vietnam in particular, besides the fact that it has favorable demographics and a large vehicle population, of course, one important factor is the fact that in a China plus one world, notwithstanding all the noise around tariffs and all of that, the fact is that supply chain diversification is here to stay in post-COVID world, and Vietnam is going to continue to be an important manufacturing and industrial hub. And that really means that there is going to be more CO2 emission, and therefore it is very important to stay focused on eliminating CO2 from transportation. So that to me is a very important driver of e-mobility investments. The Vietnam government, like you rightly pointed out, has very ambitious targets, much more than some of its Asian neighbors. And decarbonizing transportation is very important to achieve those goals. So all of this combined to make Vietnam an attractive market for us to support e-mobility investments.
All right, thank you, Shiba. So maybe I'll just turn to the crowd, and I know that we all mentioned about the potentials of electric vehicles in Vietnam. So I think perhaps this is not very Vietnam specific, but could you please raise your hand if you owned an electric vehicle at home? Okay. All right, so there's 3-4 people in the room of about 30, so that's 10%. Very similar to what Paul mentioned. Maybe, do you have an intention to buy an electric vehicle? Please raise your hand. Okay, so that's probably about 20% of the people in the room that are actually looking to buy. So I think Shuba, you mentioned one of the things like young populations and middle income class, but probably we are seeing only 30% of the people in this room actually young and middle income. So the rest is probably outside of your segments. But we are talking about, a lot of people in Vietnam still nowadays. I think they haven't thought about, sort of sustainability, not up to the standards that we are doing in Singapore or probably some other mature markets. So maybe I'll turn a bit. So what's your role? What's your visions in terms of driving this to the future? What are you doing right now to make that happen? I mean, we are talking all about the internal factors that would definitely drive it. But in your role, communications, brand awareness, sustainability, is there anything that you have been doing now?
Yeah, so when we look at the demographics and the opportunities, we found that who do we manufacture for? Who would most likely to change? And so that's why we started to focus on students. From 15 to 25, there's 22 million students from that age. So we figure, their first bike should be electric bike. The people that already purchased, it's very difficult for them to convert. So we're looking at, okay, what can we do? So we actually asked, 60 students from 12 universities to come and co-create and design for them using design thinking. And from there, we found that we have an opportunity to educate. So every week now, I either go to a university or they come to us. I mean, we have SMU, NTU, and US. We have RMIT. So every week, there's a group either coming to our R&D center or we go out there. So this is our role, how to educate, inspire our students, and so that they can go and inspire. So now we have students from here, from Singapore, from South Africa, and even Australia representing us and trying to spread the word. But in Vietnam, there's 460 universities, trade schools, and colleges, right? So this is what we are doing. Besides creating the vehicles, what we need to do is actually educating them. Because every time I go to a university, 200-300 students, and I ask the same question, right? Who came here with a motorcycle? Everyone has raised their hand. Okay, can you put your hand down, if you're not driving electric? And it's actually 2%, not 10%, but actually 2%. And the fact, and I also asked them, have you tried, electric? And most of them said, no, I haven't tried. So then we realized we have to bring it to them. The first thing is that they have to try and they have to be educated, because a lot of information, from videos, vehicle exploding and fires, things like that. So I think there's a lot of education that we need to do, that we need to inspire and for them at the same time to go and inspire others. Yeah.
Thanks, Paul. Maybe just a follow-up question for you, Paul. Being a manufacturer of EV, what probably your biggest challenge now?
Things look very easy. The opportunity looks very easy, very attractive until we get involved. And I think our biggest challenge is actually with the government regulations being changing, and also very, quite tough to get certain certifications. If we are selling something that is already produced, it's easier. But it's something new. It's also like electric. There's a lot of safety, there's a lot of things involved in there. And at the same time, the government is going through some changes now. We don't know what's coming next. So if we build something, by the end of this year, Vietnam will introduce another set of regulations, then we will be very much affected by it. So at the moment, we would, it looks easy, but when you get involved, like I said, a lot of things, it's not so easy.
All right, thanks, Paul. So the other thing that I just want to touch on, I think last year when we did the studies, the surveys with about 3,000 people here in Vietnam, and we found out very aligned with what Paul just shared with you. I think the younger generations and the one above 45 who already owned a car or motorbikes, they're probably more likely to purchase an additional electric vehicles, whereby the one in the middle seems to be a little bit reluctant. I think we got to deep dive into some of these sort of customer behaviors and see what really stopping them or how we can convert that group of customers. But there's also another group of challenge. I think this will come to you, Ian. So we also asked the people, why are you not buying electric vehicles? And I think there are three things that came about. First of all, the performance of the battery. Second, the accessibility or the availability of charging stations. And lastly, I think the aftermarkets, the after sales. For example, people say, if I'm going to the province, I'm going to the beach, and my car broke down, there's no garage in the area that would be able to fix my car, to fix my vehicle. So there's a lot of things, and probably very similar like 15 years ago when you own an iPhone, and you go to a very rural areas and your phone broke down, and would you be willing to give it to a small phone shop and say, fix it, right? So Ian, with the Charge Plus, what's your missions and how you're looking into the Vietnam market?
So I think first, we all know air quality is really horrible in places like Hanoi. And when you see what's happened in China, you see that cleaning quite effectively over 2 to 3 years. What we see in terms of, we've seen the same problem where people have charging anxiety, they're worried about the ability to charge, and even in a small country like Singapore, you get that same problem, right, which is quite surprising. You have that worry that, what happens about basically what is my resale value of my car, because there's no historical resale value for most electric cars. You have that. You have a serviceability issue, which actually is not that much of an issue, because if you have owned an EV car, there are so few components in the car compared to a normal ICE car that the quality of a car tends to be quite reliable, and there's very little issue. Now, on the charging anxiety issue, I think that is a fair concern. Even for me, when I bought my first EV car, you always think about that 2%. You drive your car 98%, 99% in that same area all the time, but you're worried about the 2% that you drive a bit further. And if you start realizing it, you realize that it's not a massive issue, number one. Number two, I think from what we see in terms of adoption is people tend to have their second cars first as an EV, get used to it, and then feel comfortable with it and realize that it's a lot easier because you never need to go to a petrol station to pump gas again, right? And that convenience makes it so much easier that you say, okay, I'll have a car that's EV because I drive it most of the time, and even for that 1%, I'll figure it out. Maybe borrow my friend's car or something. So I think that resolves a lot of the issue for car owners in general. Yeah.
So what's maybe just a confidential question? Maybe just share between these four walls. And this is a question to Ian and Shupa. So with that particular sort of gap in terms of developing the charging station to be able to address the concern of the customers, what's your plan in the short to medium term in terms of investment opportunities? Do you see that's a market for Charge Plus in your companies, in terms of investment portfolio, where you're looking into?
You want to go first?
So for chargers, I think we do. It's the same challenge that we face in every country that we put in, and even though Singapore is, we can say it's slightly ahead, we face the same issues. The first issue is who regulates the chargers, and I think that's a same problem that you face. Is it the Ministry of Transport? Is it the Electrical Ministry? Is it the Building Ministry where we are putting the chargers in at? And these are the issues that what we have seen in countries that can move a bit faster is that the government comes together and sets a cohesive strategy to facilitate EV charging. Then you have to deal with each building and basically install the chargers. And I think that's one of the challenges we face because it's a chicken and egg problem. We are happy to put the chargers there. In Vietnam right now, there are 10 different EV charging providers, but they all struggle to put chargers in because the building owners will be thinking, hey, there are not many EV cars. Why do I have to put a charger, right? So I think that is the same challenge we face. And once you get over that challenge, you normally get over when more and more cars, EV cars turn up. And in Vietnam, you have Porsche, you have BMWs, you have Mercedes that are already bringing in EV cars, in addition to all the Chinese brands, which includes Volvo, so Volvo has EV cars here, Omoda, etc. So I think once those cars start coming in, you get this kind of a tipping point where everybody is prepared to put chargers, and then you'll see more cars propagate around the whole country.
Quick question. Are these cars, brands or model, they have a different sort of standards for the plugs?
No.
Or are they following the same standards?
So there are different standards. In the US, there's a standard called Type 1. In Japan, there's another standard. But ASEAN as a group has adopted the European standard, which is called Type 2 CCS. So practically all the cars that are, including VinFast, is on Type 2 CCS, right? So you can go to any of the chargers here, any of the charging stations, and charge any of the EVs in Vietnam. No problem.
Thank you, Ian. Shupa.
Yeah.
Your investment portfolio.
Sure. Actually, our investment portfolio is quite public, so there are no secrets there. But so we have supported a two-wheeler manufacturer in Vietnam, and we have supported one in Africa as well. So manufacturing is one area where we are propagating e-mobility investments. But besides that, we are also evaluating charge point operators in some of our mandate countries. In another country in Africa, we have supported mass rapid transit of e-buses. And that is also a special project because we did some special things to enable female bus drivers, which was unprecedented in that country in Africa. And for that matter, I think it is quite unprecedented in many countries in Asia as well. We are evaluating a battery swapping related opportunity because there's always a concern on the time that charging takes, right? If you do an AC charging, it takes longer. If you take a DC charging, it does charge in a shorter time, but ultimately battery swapping is touted as a technology whereby you just are able to quickly get off the ground in just a few minutes. So we are evaluating a battery swapping opportunity. So across the spectrum, there are lots of investment opportunities in the e-mobility space that we are willing to look at and support.
Thank you very much. So just a quick recap from what our panelists are mentioning. I'm very lucky that I actually prepared and I got some facts I would like to share with you all. So I think as of probably the end of 2024, I think Vietnam had roughly about slightly over 600 public charging stations countrywide, but very, very concentrated in big cities like Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi, versus 60,000 charging stations that's available now in China. So I think in terms of sort of the development, the prospect of it's going to be huge. And second, I think now the government actually have streamlined sort of the licensing process for EV charging stations. But I think touching on what Ian mentioned, I think they haven't really specified on the standards of the charger, the technical quality. So that's sort of, it's not like an unsolved problem, but I guess it's a gray areas where if you talk to the regulators, you would be able to find out. What's developing, and that's linked to also the accessibility to the chargers, is that I think the government is now thinking and working on sort of the zoning and identifying lands within a compound, a gated compound, communities, or in a public space where all these firefighting sort of regulations are all met. So I just share with you, so I'm staying in a condo developed by one of the Singaporean developers. 2 years ago, because of the EV adoptions in Vietnam, so the condo management, they decided they built 2 charging stations. 4 months later, the local regulator came and inspect the site, and they say, sorry guys, but these charging stations are not part of the zoning, the building design when it was built, and therefore we have no ground to approve the charging station, and therefore we kindly ask you to remove and discontinue the use of the chargers. So I think things like that, and I guess, some of the new project development now, people are really looking into it and say, let's build in those charging stations within the whole building, the areas. And therefore, it will definitely promote the more usage of electric vehicle. And lastly, I think it's also the purchase price of electricity, because the EVN is kind of the electricity authorities of Vietnam is the one who dictate. I guess the selling price now being classified as a sort of a commercial. So therefore, it's also a bit higher price, and therefore, and who would be able to sell, who would be able to buy, and that's sort of the procedures that need to be addressed. So, I know that we have been talking a lot, and we have roughly about 15 minutes until the end. So I just want to give everyone in the crowd an opportunity to ask question if you have any. Any question from you? Please feel free to raise your hand. Yes.
Hi, this is for Ian. Yeah. I wanted, because I saw your booth outside, I'd like to understand between yourself and your competitors, what are the different commercialization models that are happening, whether it's to working with developers, working with condo units versus stations. Can you explain that, especially for the Vietnam market?
Sure. So, at Charge Plus, we work really with practically everyone right now. So just to give you an overview, we put it in private homes, we put it in apartment buildings, we put chargers in office, in malls, we work with bus companies, we work with taxi companies, and so we've got basically most of the models established. Today, for Vietnam, we are working with some partners to put in along the highways, and that's part of our 5,000 kilometer route from Singapore all the way to Hanoi. We are already in the process of doing that. For buildings, generally, it depends on what building it is, what kind of building it is. We will determine what is the best charger to put in. So to give you an example, Basically, what we look at is who are the people parking there. If you are going to you're going to typically park for a short while and you want to charge your car quickly, like in a highway, then we will put very high-powered chargers, DC chargers, normally 120 kilowatts or higher. But if you are going to go in and you tend to park for maybe 4 or 5 hours, then we tend to put in the AC chargers because, you don't want to have to move your car after 15 minutes or after 20 minutes of charging. So I think we look at that. Now, in terms of models, it really depends on which country we work in. So in Singapore, in Thailand, in Malaysia, most of the models that we put in there is a recognition that you put a charger in order to attract the owners of the EV cars, right? So that is the mindset that is coming in. In Vietnam, unfortunately, there's not enough EV cars, so people don't see the benefit of putting chargers to attract the cars yet. And most of the EV cars tend to be VinFast cars. So as a result, we will work on models where we have a shared revenue. But it's, with electricity, there is only a limited amount of real price increase that you can really put, and you don't want to penalize the guy who's charging the car. So we do share some revenue there, but that's generally how we work with a lot of the building owners here. Yeah, I hope.
Yeah. Is there any questions from the crowd? Okay, there's one, Ray.
Hi, I'm Ray from S&P. This can be a general question for the panelists. A lot of the comments against the EV adoption is, while of course in paper, definitely the concept is sustainable technically. A lot of the comments against it is on it being potentially more destructive to the environment, especially in the handling of the batteries. So maybe happy to hear from the panelists your insights on that.
Can I answer that quickly?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think a car EV battery is one of the biggest batteries you will see around, right? And besides Tesla's batteries that they put in houses, right? So the recycling of battery is actually very possible and already being done. So I've visited a battery recycling plant in Singapore. It's called TMM, but recently it's got acquired by the SK Group of Korea. So the ability to recycle batteries is already there. And if I remember correctly, TMM was started by someone who was actually part of the whole Tesla chain, right? So it is possible to recycle, and since batteries already can be recycling, that argument that it's detrimental is a bit, is kind of tempered in a sense. Yeah.
I'd just like to add to that. So that's a very good point. When we do our investment, we evaluate the cost benefit. So clearly, there could be issues with disposal of lithium-ion battery waste, etc. But there is an immediate impact on the environment. So when we talk about congested cities where there is a lot of tailpipe emission, which is really choking the air, and I don't know if you can transition to EVs that really improves the air quality in the immediate term, that is definitely a positive. In the long term, there are concerns, there's no doubt about it, and I'm sure we're coming up with technologies, including recycling. We're coming up with hydrogen cars. We're coming up with so many technologies that could eventually solve this problem. But I think the immediate impact on air quality and urban life just cannot be ignored.
Yeah, I just like to add a point that we have a partner that do recycling. It's actually a subsidiary of Hyundai. So they've been doing this for 15 years. So these batteries from the cars, they recycle for scooters and then for home appliances. Yeah, so in Vietnam, there's not enough EV cars at the moment, but I'm sure in the future, because they already came into Vietnam to set up the factory for the recycling and repurposing. Yeah.
Are these responses satisfy you, right? All right, thank you for the question. So for the remaining few minutes, I'll just ask, right? So I know that investing in Vietnam, doing business in Vietnam, has always have opportunities given the demographics, but there's also a lot of challenges. So I just want to hear from our panelists, right? So from Paul, as being the manufacturers of EV, you could be classify yourself as a big companies or small, medium size, however, manufacturing environments. Ian, whether you are looking to set up something permanent, a full-fledged battery charger factories in Vietnam, or what sort of model you are looking to distribute those. And Shilpa, what has been preventing you and your companies from looking for opportunities and investing and really looking into Vietnam as a destination for you to expand your footprints and your business? So perhaps a general questions on what might stop you, or what, if improve, would help you to improve your business and your opportunities here. Anyone want to?
Okay, maybe I'll start. I think for Charge Plus as a company, for us, really regulatory clarity will help. You discussed your property. From my guess, it's not really a regulatory issue as much as just one person trying to stymie the whole transition. And if the government is clear on those regulations, then the ability for a lot of charge point operators like us to be able to propagate charges so that the EV car companies can sell becomes a lot easier. And I think that's the primary challenge right now that we face. So we are definitely here to invest, to grow our whole network. We are already growing our whole network in other countries. So a good corollary would be in Indonesia. We are building charge points literally from Surabaya all the way to Jakarta, and we have massive charging depots that will service some of the big transport companies, and we are prepared to invest in all those kind of facilities to grow. So same for Vietnam. When the opportunity comes up, we will also be investing and growing the network. And, at some point, we also see there will be consolidation of the charging companies, as we already do in some of the more mature markets. And then the opportunities will come up for us to basically propagate even more of the chargers under the Charge Plus name.
Sure. So as far as PIDG is concerned, once again, I'll take the example of your condo. If you have purchased an EV car on the assumption that you have a charging infrastructure right at your condo, and subsequently the charger has been taken away, you would be disappointed because you've already put in your money, right? So for us as an investor, the sentiment is very, is very similar. We are, basing our investments on certain assumptions, and so obviously we don't like to be disappointed. We don't like shocks. We don't like frequent regulatory changes. So that a stable regulatory environment is what we generally expect for any investment in any market, whether it's Vietnam or e-mobility and so on. But what I would like to do is just name a few positive features that we have seen in other markets for the e-mobility sector, which probably Vietnam could emulate. So, for example, there is one country has subsidies. So these are capex subsidies, especially when they are deploying public buses on a large scale, and they don't want consumers to have a tariff shock. There are subsidies that are available for purchasing EVs. So that is one model. Again, it's not a sustainable model because at some point of time, purchases of EVs need to stand on their own feet and they need to be sustainable. But in the near term, it does help avoid sticker shocks for consumers. So I think that's one model. Then besides that, there are several other models, including the fact that you have EV chargers, you have inclusive designs and so on. So just to enable and catalyze electric vehicle infrastructure. So a lot of governments have taken steps to really push electric vehicle investments, and that's something that Vietnam could look to.
Thank you, Shilpa. Paul?
Yeah, so I mentioned before the regulatory is unclear, and it's also takes a long time. We found out that bike took 12 months to get the vehicle out, And so now we're moving into our 11th month. You know, it took us 12 months to R&D bikes, the swapping stations, including the e-bicycles. We couldn't get the scooters out, you know, even though we have it already. So we have to navigate around it. So I think what would be really good is clear regulations, and the other thing is government support. I know in Indonesia, in Malaysia, government supports. The other thing is, for example, you know, the 65 million petrol vehicle. I mean, Vietnam do not allow retrofit, you know, to convert them into electric. That's a huge, right? So we can actually do that, but in China it's already available. But in Vietnam, do not yet anyway, allow for retrofit. So I think a lot of this, I'm also confident, you know, the government is now making a lot of good changes. You know, they're speeding things up and consolidating. So we are kind of stuck in that, but I'm sure moving forward, the environment will be better. At the moment, we are switching to e-bicycles because the regulation is a lot less, and that we can actually. But that's also a really good opportunity for us as well, because you know, I mean, instead of changing or buying new cars in Europe and around the world, people are actually buying the e-bikes. So we're thinking, well, why don't we take a step ahead and make more of the e-bicycles, because it will use 1/10 of the electricity that is used in a scooter, and Vietnam needs electricity, right? I mean, that's another issue as well. So I think with those challenges, we also see opportunities, and like I said, I'm very positive that the government is making the right move for the future.
Thank you, Paul. So I think I just want to add my view. I think you know, if you are looking into this year to date, and despite the government have been sort of helping business to recover from the recession, from some of the external shocks like tariffs, including VAT reductions from 10% down to 8% to stimulate consumption, and then sort of extending sort of the tax inspections for most of the business. We are seeing year to date in the first 5 months, I think the number of inspections and the tax collection was actually ahead of last year's same period of time. So the government are still doing that despite all this effort. Having said that, Paul, you touch on it. I think one of the things we are seeing with the administrative reforms, when they are reducing the number of ministries from the central government, reducing from 64 provinces down to about 32, 34, that would drive what we call the megacities. But the other thing is, I think the administrative process and the policy would be more streamlined. You know, now Bình Dương and Bà Rịa Vũng Tàu will be, you know, following the Ho Chi Minh City in terms of some of the adoption, the strategy, and the priorities. And I believe that would be a very, very big push to roll out a lot of the priorities, including the sustainabilities, as we say. So with that, I think we are. I think our organizer says time up. I just want to see if any of our panelists have any last words or takeaway for our audience. You got 10 seconds.
There's someone.
All right, yeah.
Yes, I'm the organizer. Sorry about the time. But I think I just want to say a few comments more from a consumer perspective. I'm part of the 10% that own an EV car today. Very good insights, especially also Paul on, you know, the educational part. I think myself born in Denmark, coming from a country where they really boost the EV space as well. More on the bike side, I can say.
Yeah, I think we had this discussion yesterday,
yeah.
And you know, in Holland, 40% of the roads built for bikes. And yesterday we talked to Leo from Megacities. So our factory is in Megacities, and you know, they're working on a plan to do bike lanes. I said, wow, that's the best thing that can happen. You can't do that in Singapore anymore, right? There's no bike lanes. But I think we can bypass and go into bike lanes, and that's probably one of the best things that can happen. And I think it would happen in Bình Dương first, and it needs to be more of that around the country. Yeah,
exactly. And I think another point, especially from a consumer's perspective, I bought a car around 4 years ago. There was no charger in my apartment complex.
Time to change.
Yeah, there was no charger around my area, to be honest. But I think a lot of the other speakers today touched upon it is the purpose. So from a consumer perspective, purpose-driven. That my kids, hopefully the future of Vietnam, they can change that. So I encourage everybody that are thinking about buying a car, bicycle, scooter, just do it. I think it's only for our planet. It's good, and especially for Vietnam as a market and a country. I think just one comment from me regarding actually charging station around. My family do it as a family activity. So we charge the car once a week, Saturday, Sunday, as example. We find a charging spot where we have, let's say, shopping center around, where we have a cafe. So we actually use the charging time, 1.5 hours, as a family activity. So you don't necessarily need to have it in your apartment complex, we found out. But yeah, we found a solution to actually spend more family time with the challenge we had of not having the charging in the apartment complex.
So since you're in Ho Chi Minh, you can go to like Phu My Hung Crescent Mall. We've got chargers there.
Yeah.
Fast chargers.
Yeah. So
Please use them.
Okay, the final remarks from me, which is, because my role, I'm also working in Cambodia, and with thinking about Cambodia as a less developed country, and I'm sure in a certain areas and industry, you would find a lot of the communities in Cambodia, the modern communities, they have the bike lanes. They have the bike lane specifically designed for the community, and that shocked me. I witnessed that 3 years ago, and it's still developing in Phnom Penh. So that might be an opportunity that you should be looking at.
Yeah, so my last word would be buy an EV. Our bikes are coming out in July. But it's actually very healthy. I mean, there's research to say, pedal assist bikes actually good for people's health. And it's really addictive. It's really good to ride. And I think very positive about these changes coming, and looking forward to more of this infrastructure, right? And of course, a lot of charging stations. I know Stefan from eBoost is here as well. So we're looking forward to more and more chargings to work together. Yeah.
All right. So with that, I would like to thank you, our esteemed panelists, for very insightful sharing. And ladies and gentlemen, I do hope that you enjoyed the sessions. And if you do, please give us a round of applause.